We've recently recorded a more conceptual video about the Blackmagic ATEM ecosystem, and a lot of people in the comments wanted to see how we use them in our own studio. So today, we're going to explain our double ATEM recording process. I'm sure I'll make some assumptions along the way, so feel free to ask any questions about our setup in the comments. We will have a video specifically about our editing and post-production workflow coming soon, but for now, let's dive into the physical setup and how we record. Here at BrainStem Studios, we make top-notch podcasts and produce all kinds of content, both in-house and for clients. For our shoots at our studio, we have a total of 4 camera angles. Each camera is on set, with the signal running through HDMI cables into the control room here. The primary trio of mirrorless cameras runs into our ISO ATEM, which also has Ethernet, HDMI out, and audio in from our Rodecaster. You might be thinking, what about that 4th input? And that's where we actually use a second ATEM, that we call our router. Before we tell a tale of 2 ATEMs, let's go over our audio. We have access to 4 XLR inputs on set with our Subsnake, and they all come back into our Rodecaster. We typically record our audio twice over for both redundancy and flexibility, recording individual tracks on the Rodecaster and sending the overall output into the ATEM. This helps with both audio synchronization and workflow efficiency, as the audio is more than adequate straight from the ATEM for our live cuts. If you're using this setup, make sure you set your software settings on your ATEM to line input to prevent extreme clipping, because when I say extreme, I mean extreme.
Good morning, I'm Jimbo Merrill, one of the senior advisors at the Old Wise Ones.
We also have an X32 for routing, talkback, and more dynamic recordings, but to simplify this a bit, we'll skip that for now. Back to the router ATEM, we actually use it for a few different reasons. One of them is that we have multiple 4th cameras depending on which set we're using. Since they're just out of reach without a ladder, it proved easier to route both of them into the secondary ATEM and switch between them there rather than moving cables every single time. This configuration also allows us to add up to 7 cameras for shoots that would demand it, though only 4 would be ISO recorded. We currently use it for the 2 cameras along with a 3rd input that goes into our controller iMac. This specific iMac's sole purpose is to control the ATEM software and BitFocus Companion, which we've already made a short video about, but let us know if you want a deeper dive. Another main reason we actually do this is to create extra screen real estate for our editing iMac, this guy. Though we don't always use it in this way, certain tasks benefit significantly from the extra real estate. This slightly strange routing system allows us to use Apple's display extending to bypass the maximum amount of displays we can plug into the iMac. Essentially, we call it the router ATEM because it routes both camera and computer signals throughout the studio. One piece that helps make this much easier, since both of these ATEMs only have one HDMI out, is an HDMI splitter. We typically use this for the primary ATEM to allow our camera operators to see what's happening on set, but we've also switched it to our secondary ATEM to play presentations on the studio's monitor while maintaining the multi-view inside the control room. Also, I mentioned it in passing before, but one of the biggest things that makes this setup tick effortlessly is BitFocus Companion. By connecting both ATEMs and all our other devices to one local network, we can control anything from one control panel that can be pulled up on an iPad, a Stream Deck, or even my phone. We created macros that can switch between editing mode and shooting mode to switch multiple I/O settings on both ATEMs with a single button press. Now, if you know Blackmagic's lineup, you might be asking, why not just use an ATEM Extreme ISO? And there's a few answers to that, and which one might be best for your setup. If we had 8 cameras and we needed to ISO record them all, this would be a better option. But the truth is, we don't in our current setup. On top of that, we already had the secondary ATEM in our studio, so it made the most sense to build off of it. Though it also means that if we want to take an ATEM on location, we can maintain the majority of our setup in the studio while doing that. This configuration also allows for 2 fully isolated green screen keys to happen at once, so if we want different backgrounds for different angles, we can do it. There would be some definite upsides to running an extreme ISO over this setup, such as gaining super view, but also decent-sized downsides for our specific use case. Overall, our ATEM workflow makes shooting high-quality multicam podcasts as efficient as possible. By adding a second ATEM, we were able to improve this workflow even further. If you want an even deeper dive into BitFocus Companion setup or want to see more behind the scenes, let us know what we can do in the comments. Otherwise, we'll catch you in our next video. Hi, Ace.